We're going to go ahead and call to order the meeting for the Capital Funding Protection Committee, October 31st, 2024, and wish everyone a happy Nevada Day. Yes. And if we could go ahead and start out with roll call, please.
Paul Anderson.
Here.
Clara Andriola.
Present.
Elise Bonkowski.
Here.
Charlene Bybee.
Here.
Chris Cobb.
Here.
Andrew Diss. Jean Herman.
Here.
Justin Ivory.
Here.
Miguel Martinez. Devin Reese. And Craig Wessner. And we have a quorum.
All right, thank you very much. And we're going to go ahead and move on to item 2.01, approval of the minutes from the October 3rd, 2024 meeting. Oh. Actually, yeah, I'm not seeing public comment. Oh, geez. All right, thank you. Item number 2, yeah, public comment. Do we have any public comment?
No.
All right, thank you. And now we can move on to item 2.01. Approval of the minutes of the October 3rd, 2024 meeting of the Capital Funding Protection Committee. Do we have any questions, changes? Do we have a motion?
Mr. Chair, I'll move to approve the Capital Funding Protection Committee minutes of October 3rd, 2024, and also note the appreciation for encapsulating with such succinctness with Mr. Justin's, Mr. Ivory's analysis during the last meeting.
Thanks, Claire.
You're welcome.
Well done.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, we have first by member Andriola, second by Bybee. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. 2.02, presentation, discussion on status of the new elementary school instead, the Silver Dollar area, including a supplemental budgetary recommendation.
Hi. I'm Teresa Polson, the Director of Planning and Design for the Washoe County School District. I just wanted to say thank you very much, first of all, for all of you coming today to attend this additional meeting so we could review this project status. So I just wanted to start off with a little bit of history on the project and how we got to this point. Back in August, we did receive full construction funding approval from this group, and that would include construction, FF&E, and professional services, and that amount was $52.3 million. In October, just a few weeks ago, we did take the project out to bid. Bids were opened, and the low bid was $54.2 million, and that was for construction only. So that's why we're here today, to discuss that. So I wanted to start off by just talking a little bit about the design differences between our last elementary school that was just built and this Stead Elementary School. First of all, the last school in our original prototype is 86,000 square feet approximately with 28 classrooms. This Stead Elementary School is 30 classrooms and 88,000 square feet. And the main reason for the increase in that size is due to the overcrowding in the area, and it gives us flexibility to rezone later. Next is the site work and grading at the Stead Elementary School was significantly more at this site. We did have to provide our own grading for the building pad. Oftentimes the developer will either provide that to us or at a very reduced cost in many cases, but we did provide our own this time. And also because of the grades at that site, we did have a significant amount of lineal footage for the retaining walls. I think it was about 1,200 lineal feet of retaining wall at this site, which is not very common for our sites. Lastly, the geothermal wells for the ground source heat pump system at this site were required to be 500 feet deep. which is pretty significant change from Jaywood Raw, which was, they were 200 feet deep at that site. Asking my mechanical engineer what sort of drives that depth, and her answer to me was that the thermal conductivity and the temperatures are really what we're trying to get just right in order to provide the right temperatures of water that go into the building. So just revisiting our approved funding request back from August, it was $46.1 million that was approved for construction only. That number was provided by our third-party estimator, Cumming Group, who we do have on the line today with us to help us with this presentation. We have Ryan Zulicki. Sorry, we should have introduced him earlier. But that estimate did include a 4% contingency and 21% escalation from Jaywood Raw. So that brings us to bid day. On October 7th, we had 4 bidders for this project. Plenium was our lowest bidder, but unfortunately they were a non-responsive bidder, so we were not able to take their low bid. That gave Clark and Sullivan, put them in the apparent low bidder category at $54.2 million. And then below that, you'll just see some previous bid comparisons that I wanted to list with the past 2 elementary schools. The difference between the cost in Jaywood Raw and Stead Elementary School is looking at 44% increase, or $16.6 million. So, I'm going to give it over to Ryan right now. He is on the virtual call. He's going to talk a little bit more in depth about the bid analysis and what we've, been discussing, and how these, sort of what the significant factors have been in the increase in cost from the last school. So, hand it to you, Ryan.
Hi, can everyone hear me? It's Ryan Zelke. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
You're good.
Okay. Oh, good. Well, thanks for letting me attend to virtually. I apologize I'm not there in person, but I'm very heavily involved in the Reno market. There's a very significant amount of construction in your area. Completely involved with the Reno Airport, which is a $650 million project. We have data centers going on, manufacturing, just to list some of the big projects going in the Reno market, which is good and bad, because it is grabbing all your significant, your short or your little pool of subcontractors in the area. And now we are also seeing unprecedented rate increases, prevailing wages for Washoe County. So the next slide shows a 33% increase just on the MEP trades alone. That is mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and any pipe fitting, also your sprinkler fitters systems, which also is also being handled by your ground source heat pump system. So we are experiencing the same challenges at the airport, as we are having to drill our geothermal wells at 500 feet deep too. And the one bidder we used to get out of Montana has said he is too busy to come to the Nevada market anymore, which is a little displeasing, but it's the times. So, for example, the ground source heat pump has all these horizontal pipe fitters trade to install it all. So they got about a 13% increase since 2022. And Teresa has also provided that prevailing wage document at the end. It is not being published right now on the internet, but it has, these rates have gone into effect as of October 1st of 2024. So every prevailing wage union contractor is bidding at these higher rates. So the challenge with ground source heat pump, Clark and Sullivan, to solve it, they had to get 4 drillers in your area and another sub to install the horizontal piping, which was being installed by just one subcontractor out of Montana with a lot lower of a rates. Want to go to the next slide, Teresa?
Yep.
Yep. Next slide is showing the bid analysis. So there's pretty much 5 major trades that I kind of already mentioned. The earthwork and utilities trades went up about 32%. The geothermal, almost to $5 million. Yes, that's somewhat due to the depth, but at Jaywood, for example, we only paid $1 million, and now we're paying almost $5 million just on the geothermal scope alone. The mechanical scope went up about 24%. The plumbing scope about 30%. And electrical at 90%. So, and then the remaining subcontractors was another about 5.3. But overall, that includes all the 16.6 million difference that we were saying from Jaywood and Inskeep Elementary Schools.
Yes.
Can I ask, hey Brian, on this comparison, the percentages, I'm reading it like the percentage differences were Inskeep to Jaywood, and then the farthest right-hand percentage is what Stead
Yeah.
would be. Am I reading it wrong?
That is correct. I think he was quoting the wrong column.
Yeah, you're sorry. Inskeep. Yeah. So as you see, then if you look at the geothermal, yes, from Jaywood to Stead, it looks like a weird percentage, 350%, 351%. Yes. So, yeah. So as you're seeing most of these trades are over almost 50% or over from Jaywood.
All right.
And yes.
Any more on that slide, Ryan?
Nope, I'm good. It's your turn.
Okay, sounds good. Do you guys have any more questions on the wells themselves while we're on this slide? Do you want to just chat about it now?
Mr. Ivory?
So my question comes into the prior to bid. How do we determine the depth of the well? At what point in the design process does that happen?
Pretty early on, we hire the well driller to go out and do some bore logs, and they do the testing and give us the results. You know, we have had, Inskeep was 400 feet deep. Now, that is something that can be played with. After talking with my mechanical engineer a little bit more about this, we can provide more wells that are less deep, or we can provide deeper wells and less number of wells. I mean, and she's like, there's a ton of variables, I guess, that really she can kind of play with. Ultimately, I'm not so sure it would reduce the cost in this case, but we do receive it pretty early on so that they can design, the system accordingly.
When we get that information from the driller that comes out, I've got to assume we're also getting some geo report
Geotech?
so that we can have some sort of idea. Because obviously, if you're drilling 500 feet into sand, not a big deal, right? But you're drilling 500 feet
Right.
into rock. Because obviously with the numbers coming up as different as they are, I'm just trying to avoid this in the future. Because it looks to me like when we're actually looking at the cost benefit of doing the geothermal wells, the increased cost would take us close to 100 years to pay that back in cost savings and energy cost savings if we locked in the energy cost savings at $50,000 a year.
Yeah.
So it seems to me like if we knew going into this that the geothermal wells were going to cost this much, we probably wouldn't have done geothermal wells here.
Yeah, the ROI that the mechanical engineer gave me was 50 years. Now, that's still a really long time. I don't think that, the depth of the wells has everything to do with this cost. I think the fact that we have 4 to 5 subs that have to do this project, and we've got, mobilization and demobilization of all of those contractors. I don't know what all the factors are, but quite frankly, I think you're right. I mean, I think we need to really reevaluate these systems. Part of the reason we do these systems is not only for sustainability goals, obviously, because of the energy cost savings versus doing the water source system. But it still takes a long time to get the payback. But another reason for it is maintenance. and maybe Tammy could speak a little bit to this, but, you know, maintenance is part of the reason that we've converted to these systems as well, because there's a lot less to maintain in the ground source systems versus the water.
Love
So
to hear.
yes, we would, this will probably be one of our last schools we do this on anyway, right? If you look at our facility modernization, they're on active campuses with smaller pieces of land. We'll probably be doing a traditional boiler chiller system in that. But it is the utility costs that we would be saving in the general fund. It is maintenance. We don't have to spend as much time out there for maintenance. They just run themselves. So that is a big savings on the general fund side as well. But going forward, we talked about this before today and thinking, would we be doing this again? Most likely not, right? We don't have brand-new schools like this coming up. We have facility modernizations.
And I'm assuming that the same thing that's escalating the wells is, I'm assuming we've got a big rock there that we're working on once we get down a certain, and I'm assuming that's also the reason perhaps for the site work. Obviously, we've got some retaining walls, but I mean, we should have some pretty good understanding of what retaining walls cost, and all that.
Correct. And that was the differences from Jaywood to Stead, not necessarily the increase of the cost, right? The increase of the cost was mostly MEP, according to what our third parties spoke about. So we were giving you a comparison of just the differences from a design from one site to the other.
And then there was also a note in here on the geothermal, my last question here, on the geothermal. There's a tax credit, or there's some sort of credit that comes back from the federal government?
Yes, there's an IRA tax credit that we can get funding back for these. You know, we have to put it into service, we submit building plans, and we get funds back for that. They cover the cost of that. We do have to have some third parties help us to get those tax credits. We're working currently on Jaywoods. But
Okay.
there is a tax IRA.
Does that money come back to the general fund of the Washoe County School District, or does that come back to capital funding?
That would go into our energy and conservation budgets, and we could use it for additional energy and conservation items, which could come back to capital. Like a shade structure, those kind of things, so yes,
Okay, so more than likely, it's going to get reinvested back into the capital improvement stuff.
it'll be reinvested.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. That's all I have on that.
Tammy, you were talking about the savings. So can you ballpark for us the maintenance savings that we would be seeing to, yeah, I mean, looking at a 50-year payoff, how much less would that be if the maintenance costs are lower?
So for all the new schools that we built, our energy costs have stayed consistent, right? From before those new schools were built. And we did, and I should give it to you guys, probably the presentation we had to the Board of Trustees for our energy and sustainability that shows that. I'd have to go back and look. I don't know the exact number, but our new buildings are more efficient than the old buildings, right?
I understand the efficiency. I'm talking about on the maintenance savings.
The maintenance savings.
Yeah.
I'd have to go back and look at an estimate, because really all they're replacing there are filters for those systems. So I can get you that information. But they are, based off of what we hear from them and work orders that we see, they're not out at those sites like they are at a traditional boiler and chiller, repairing the chillers and replacing boiler parts.
All right, thank you. Yeah, actually, if you would
Yeah.
send over that information, that would be interesting just to know. Thank you. Member Bybee?
I have a lot of concerns, a lot of questions. I get the information and then am wondering if we knew, because we knew we had to go 500 feet early in the process, as we estimate the costs and what we approve for every school we've built since WC1 and before, or even our other projects that are going on, we're hopefully getting good consultants that are giving us good estimates on what, and then even padding that. If we knew that we had to go down 500 feet more, and then we're looking at this increase in the geothermal, that's 351% higher. I get part of it is your labor and the well drillers, but why didn't we know that? And why didn't, these numbers, when I'm looking at 50, 48, 47, but I'm looking at 351 and then 342%. How are we so off? There's a certain amount of inflation and of labor costs, but I'm really struggling with understanding how we were so far off, and we're looking at $8 million, and I don't know where that's coming from.
Yeah.
So maybe you can help me understand as we bid this, and I've been so excited to tell everybody with every school we've been building, and Adam knows, I keep saying, we've been on time, except for Debbie Smith, we've been on time, we've been under budget. It's been great. But for this one to go to bid, how could we be so off on our numbers?
Yeah, Ryan, you want to take that one?
Yeah, it's a little hard to answer, but for the geothermal example, we did account for the 500-foot depth. His name is Ken Bertram Drilling. They've done the last 6 elementary schools and middle schools. I don't know how many middle schools, but Tammy could probably answer that. He's done them all. He's out of Montana. And he basically told us he's too busy in 2025 to do your guys' jobs. So we were relying on one driller, and he would do everything turnkey. So now our consultant strategy was to get 4 drillers to do the same amount of vertical length as Bertram does, and then have to hire a pipe fitter. They're mechanical, which is, I think, ACO, another mechanical stuff to do all of the horizontal piping. He was doing that all turnkey. So we relied on his pricing. I talked to him. He's come out to Reno to do all the tests for us, and he's now said he's too busy. And then you guys got a labor increase October 1st on the pipe fitters.
So
I'm just showing from 2022.
We worked with him, and assuming that he would have it on his calendar because he's doing our other work, and then all of a sudden to lose that, obviously we didn't have him under contract then.
And we
Was he
can't.
under contract?
This is a public bid process.
Okay.
So we can't
Okay.
just select our contractors. And it depends on, what drillers are pairing up with what general contractors.
Okay, so he's not available, he wouldn't be putting the bid in for the geothermal drilling. Okay, I do have the big one that I looked at, that I'm not sure I understand, well, I do and I don't, builder risk insurance. So that builder risk insurance going up $342,000.
Ryan, do you want to explain what the builder's risk is?
Sorry.
Hey, we were just kind of showing there's a little bit more risk put onto the contractor now, Clark and Sullivan, from a couple of years ago. But we're seeing all insurances. We used to see them for this district around 2%, and it's now around up to 2.8%. So it's just the sign of the times. It's hard to say.
Well, and I get that because
insurances have gone up.
And
Yeah.
insurance, and I get it too, around the country, you can't even get insurance sometimes. I mean, I get that, and we know it on a city side too. But when I look at 342%, I'm like trying to make sense of it.
Well, a lot of it is just the dollar value of the jobs since they've gone up so much. It's the same percentage almost, but it's just you're still insuring 2% on a direct contract, if that makes sense, compared to Inskeep and Jaywood.
Well, and I'm curious too, the Jaywood number seems oddly low. So I think it jacks up that percentage even higher when you're comparing Jaywood and Stead. Because Jaywood went down from Inskeep, so it seems like a little bit of an oddity.
Mr. Ivory.
Just a quick question on the builder risk insurance. Is there more stringent requirements by us, the owner, for the general contractor over what we did at J. Woodrow?
I don't know the answer to that. Do you?
So we're not asking more coverage or different type of coverage or anything like that. It's just literally the the cost of the builder's risk insurance has gone up.
Correct. It's
Okay.
the same specification in our bids that has been in there for the last, since we did Debbie Smith. We did change it just a little bit with Debbie Smith, but after that, all of them have had the same specifications.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions before we move on? Mr. Cobb?
So this one, we hard bid it, and I understand we were switching from CMAR to hard bid because now we have a prototype, let's roll. Just looking at, look, we got an election coming up, we got a lot of changes coming. CMAR's, the beauty of that is you have a contractor at the table when you're going through the design process. So that estimating process, there's a check and balance. That's great, we have consultants, but that contractor at that table at that same time with a CMAR, there's a check and balance between the two. So let's be real, contractors can get a lot closer with some real numbers. Not always, it's not always that way, but going forward, you know, I think there's a value of, even though you have a prototype, let's truly look at whether or not we should be using a CMAR, or I just feel like we got caught here thinking, hey, the prototype, and unfortunately, you've got an increase in labor. You've got a well driller that we've always depended on that all of a sudden he's like, man, I'm busy. And everybody's left scrambling trying to figure out how to punch wells 500 feet, which makes me nervous for their part because ours are 500 feet. So it just something to consider, because I don't know what it made a difference or not, but I think it would have helped identify maybe earlier that we are going to pay more, because you've got 4 bids that are very close.
Yeah.
That is the one thing on here. These don't, it's not out of whack. I mean, you got 4 bids that are tight. This is the cost of what this design is.
I think we will, this is Tammy Zimmerman, Chief Facilities Management Officer. I think we will be working with our third-party estimators to include in their scope the outreach to Truckee Meadows contractors for that information, instead of using more of the regional approaches, which is what has been happening to a large extent. So I think that's a lessons learned for us, is to change that scope for them, so we gain that information accurately.
Any other questions before we move on? Member Herman?
I think that I would think we wouldn't be voting on this right now with all the changes and be feeling very responsible. We've got an election that's going to make some changes. Could this be put off until a little bit later on, into the next month?
I'd like to just finish the presentation before we answer that question.
Yeah, we'll go ahead and hold off on answering that for just a moment, okay? Member Herman?
Yes. What was the question?
No, we're actually going to wait just a moment. Let her finish the presentation before we go to answering your question.
Sure. Okay, let's go to the next one. Mm-hmm.
Okay, it's not. Yeah, my remote's not working all of a sudden. There we go. Okay, well, moving forward, we do have some options, right, to discuss. We all know that this school was, I believe, our first elementary school replacement project that was prioritized in the facility modernization plan. And due to overcrowding, due to the age of the building, and safety issues on Stead Boulevard. So, you know, our pros are to, that is one of our pros. Obviously, if we move forward now, we will not be dealing with any potential more increases in cost escalation, not only for construction, but for, you know, professional services, FF&E, and any other items that are still to be procured. We did already talk about the fact that we are planning on applying for these energy rebates for that ground source heat pump system. My understanding is those rebates are around 6% of the total design and construction cost of the ground source heat pump system, not all total construction, but of the system itself. The cons, of course, are costs, which we've been talking through. We know that, prevailing wage rates are not going to go down. So that is not going to change. I think the well drillers and the geothermal field itself is something that, is a wild card, and moving forward, we'll just have to discuss whether or not it's worth it. But as Tammy stated, we don't have too many pieces of fresh land to build on anymore, so there probably won't be many, if any, of those moving forward. So our second option is to place the project on hold and potentially, go into value engineering. Some of the low-hanging fruit that we've talked about is, of course, the ground source heat system, as well as, we did add the 2 classrooms. We could take those 2 classrooms out, looking at a potential savings of about $4 million. But then the cons of that are all listed below, and we feel like that the cons outweigh the pros, unfortunately, financially. Because the cost of redesign, we're paying consultants, all the consultants, more money to do the redesign. We're paying more for permits. And then again, potential for more escalation on construction, FF&E, and professional services. In addition to that, we did already talk about the $50,000 annual energy cost savings if we don't do the ground source heat pumps. Sorry, if we do the ground source heat pumps. But also the removal of the classrooms isn't something I don't think is very attractive for us, because it does limit our flexibility in rezoning later around that area. Overcrowding obviously will continue. It will most likely delay some of our other facility modernization projects, and it certainly will delay the school opening probably at least another year. So moving forward, our recommendation is to move forward at this time, as painful as it is, to request the additional $8.1 million to finish this project. If so, we would take to the board the approval of the construction contract with Clark & Sullivan next month, November 12th. Construction would begin in December with school opening in fall 2026. If option 2 is selected, of course, we would start to evaluate the project, potentially do some value engineering, and just decide on some dates moving forward. And but certainly, again, we'll delay the school opening. So that concludes the presentation. Do you guys have any more questions?
All right. Actually, I would say if you would go ahead and let's jump into Member Herman's question.
Sure.
Did you want her to restate it?
Yes, please.
Jean, would you
I
mind
was-
restating your question?
Just roughly, I just was thinking that maybe this needs a little bit more thinking, but that's up to the board. So I just wanted to make that suggestion, and because there are some like the wells are a wild card, and that's that's something you got to think about. And so that's all I had to say. And I just thought maybe a little more time needed to go into this.
Okay. Thank you, Jean. Appreciate that. Any other questions from the board members? Member Ivory.
Okay, maybe not questions, but maybe just comments here. So I don't necessarily disagree with Member Herman. My concern, though, is I think depending on how the election goes, it's going to kind of be between whether we continue kind of on the same path and whether we light a match to construction in this town and it takes off like crazy. Now, as a contractor, I can tell you I've got a ton of bids out there right now, And I feel as though people are just kind of waiting to see what happens, and then they're going to pull the trigger. My concern would be if we waited, any cost savings that we could maybe do in valued engineering, I think are going to come back as lack of competition and price increases that we're going to see. I personally don't see $1 million savings in the 2 classrooms. I mean, I don't build schools, but I'm guessing the classrooms are probably the cheapest square footage price stuff versus the kitchens and the bathrooms and whatnot. So I would assume that we can't just take the square footage price and say that's going to be our savings there. For me, I think is unpleasant as it may be to spend another $8 million on a school. I mean, I go back, heck, I was here when we were only spending $350 a square foot. And we were like, holy cow, that's a lot of money per square foot. We're getting ready to spend $650 a square foot. But I've also talked, just kind of some insight. I've talked to custom home builders right now that are building custom homes that are not fancy custom homes, and their numbers that they're talking about square footage wise to build a custom home is around $400 to $450 a square foot. We've always been higher at the district, right? Because we build to a standard that not everyone builds to. So I think it would be my 2 cents that we approve this increase now and bite the bullet. Best case scenario is we reevaluate, take the heat pump system out, still end up spending the same amount of money, and then we don't hand on the $50,000 a year savings to the district where they could be spending it on things that are better served for our kids. We've got the money to do it. I think it's my 2 cents is we pull the trigger and do this.
Thank you. Member Cobb?
And Justin, just with my experience, every time I've shelved a bid, I've paid more the next time around. Just as you said, whether it's through escalation or you thought there's something, you pay more. A year ago, we did bids for some stuff on the runway. There wasn't enough money. We shelved it. It cost $3 million more the following year. So it's watching this. We're continually seeing these costs, construction costs, especially in government, because whether it's Davis-Bacon or prevailing wage, you're paying. There's continual increases we keep seeing the per square foot or even per square yard for concrete go up. I guess my biggest question for the team: what impact the $8 million? Where obviously we're getting this from our WC1. Does this impact what we were looking forward with the rest of our plan? How big an impact is this?
So I've confirmed with our CFO that this money will be coming from savings from past projects.
Okay.
So luckily it won't have an impact on our other modernization projects coming up.
So the only other opportunity, I know you have 1 or 2 choices for VE. Either you have to shelve it and go VE it, or very similar, when we built Golden Eagle, we came in, we were well over budget. We were able to award the project and work with our contractor to look at opportunities we missed during design. I'm not talking classrooms, but are there opportunities? I know it's a prototype. Clark and Sullivan is an amazing team here in this valley, and I'm sure the subs are on there. Are there opportunities they see, just knowing whether it's materials, where it's coming from, still ensuring it meets the quality we need, but what do they see in those opportunities? Do they see something with, especially the site work, right? You never know. These guys do it for a living. They might have some ideas. Look to do that award and then lean hard on the Clark and Sullivan team. Hey, what do you guys see in the plans here that does not take away from the ed spec, does not take away from what we need long-term maintenance-wise, but what might be missed that is it going to save $8 million? No. Do you get 500,000, even $1 million? Hey, that's success. So.
Thank you. Member Bybee?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One of my questions was just answered. What I asked in the beginning, where the 8 million comes from. I know my bank account is not, I couldn't find, and most Americans today have nothing extra. But I think all of us on this board really consider it's a very serious role that we've taken here, because we're responsible to the taxpayers who passed WC1, and we're the guardian of every dime we spend. And so I appreciate especially the experts in the room who really bring building and all these things that I don't have. I'm again really disappointed that we're so far off on this. I feel better that the 8 million, if it's there from savings. And I guess my second question was, is it going to affect our facility modernization plans? But then I think about how far off we were on this. Are we off on our facility modernization bids and costs? And are we getting hit with the same issues of insurance, of labor? Have we not cushioned it enough? Have we not done, I would hope we go back and really look at how did we miss the mark? And that's for CFO, who's the numbers guy, who that's his job to do that, but that's our job to watch and make sure that we're being more thorough. And if you had come to us in the beginning and we were going to approve, this full amount, day one, we all would have been concerned, wow, how come it's so much more than J. Raw Wood, I always get that wrong. But we would have approved it with all the info that you gave us. And I know it just kind of feels like we get bids, and to Chris's point, they were all close. It wasn't like we were getting, that anybody was way out of line. They were all really tight. How did we miss it by that much? And how did the team, as we look forward for the modernization plans? And we will have other schools. There's a school that's going to be coming out to Stonebrook in my ward that you're going to need we're going to be building more schools through the years. So that is my really a heartburn today. I feel better that the money is there, because we have to feel responsible. We are responsible for taking another $8 million of taxpayer dollars and spending it responsibly. And the need is there. The only other question I had written down on the enrollment right now for the schools that are out there, what is our percentage of overcrowding and projection? And I'm guessing, because every time I go 395 North, there's a ton of houses being built. So, because nobody can afford them here in town, so families are moving out there. So are we what is our overcrowding scenario? How overcrowded are we now? And then when they open, will it be full like Marvin Moss was when my boys opened it? It went 300 over what they thought. So that would be, that would be the only question I had.
So we're currently doing a zoning out there. We started in September here in the boardroom, had an October meeting out at O'Brien. And what we're trying to do is level between Silver Lake, Stead, and Lemon Valley, those enrollments. And we take, even through the projections for 10 years where we have the building going on out there, we projected to where they end up being about 70% in enrollment capacity for Silver Lake, Stead, and Lemon Valley. They have not made a final decision, right? But we're trying, that's always their question, and that's always what we want to do, is optimize all of those schools out there. So we feel pretty confident with what we have in the 2 classrooms here added to this school and the existing that's currently out there, knowing that they will have modernizations as well, right? And at Silver Lake, and a new building at for Lemon Valley, that they will be able to moderate any of that growth within those existing schools.
Yes, Member Andriola.
Thank you. So thank you for even the person on the phone for doing this, because I know it's not an easy meeting to essentially discover some things that everyone knows you would want to have known prior. But I am going to agree that 8 million is a lot, knowing that it's coming from savings. That was going to be one of my questions, and I think it's comforting, but it doesn't mean just because you save something that you should spend it, right? But at the same time, postponing it, I think the gamble with that could easily wipe that out, depending on whatever else is a surprise. Hopefully nothing. But I'm hoping that there's an opportunity, which has already been said, to actually look at what those lessons learned are and share that. I think that would be helpful. I also think, to Mr. Cobb's point, you know, and Mr. Ivory as well, like, contractors want to be good partners, and they do have a lot of value they can add in some things that may be something you all haven't thought of. I'm not saying you haven't, but I think looking at that, because they want to continue to be good partners here too, and to continue to have that opportunity to work. And I think that the CMAR is interesting, that I wasn't around when all of this was a hard bid versus CMAR. So I think the analysis, I'm sure you guys are already way ahead of all these questions that we're even asking and bringing up, and even preparation for this meeting, let alone the surprise that you must have had getting the news. But I don't think it's worth the gamble. 8 million, in my opinion, as I stated, could go quickly with something else. But moving forward, would you be able to bring back what those lessons learned and what you think the models might be moving forward? And really, I hope even engaging the contractors on some suggestions. If you don't ask, you'll never know.
Absolutely.
And again, I think whether it be Clark and Sullivan or any of the other contractors we're here, or other contractors that either have provided work here or those in the future, everyone wants to be a good steward, because if you're not doing a good job, that's going to reflect in the future. And so I think it's in everybody's best interest to try and see what we can garner from them. But I just don't see, we're a gambling town, and this is not a gambling opportunity. I don't think that we should be gambling and hoping that something might happen with the election or what have you. I think postponing it could eat up the 8 million quickly, and I don't think it's worth the risk. And that's what we have to mitigate. So I'm going to support the recommendation, with all the caveat of all the wonderful lessons learned. And maybe we can save 8 million with all of the great suggestions or other things that might be a model that you move forward. To a certain extent, WC1 is really not that old. And so as we're moving in this direction, there's always lessons learned. So hopefully we can capitalize them with dollar savings as well, especially with pre-planning like that. So I appreciate you all doing this, quite frankly. Thank you. It's hard to say, by the way, we have to call a special meeting. We could be trick-or-treating for those that might want. This was not the trick-or-treat meeting we wanted. So yeah, I mean, Mr. Cobb came, I mean, you're ready.
Yeah.
You're ready to go. But again, I'll just end by, again, extending my appreciation. I'm sure we all feel that way for you doing the hard work. So thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other questions? All right, I just had one. If you could help me understand the 6% savings through the credit, what is that 6% based off of?
So my understanding, talking with our deputy chief, who has been sort of running that rebate through J. Wood Raw, is that it's any sustainable system above and beyond what's required by code, right? So in our case, or in these cases with these schools, it's really just the geothermal ground source heat pump system. So they base it on what it costs to build it and what it costs to design just that system, is my understanding. Is that your understanding?
That's correct. They,
that correct?
they ask for our schedule of values for that, so they can pick out the parts for just that system to determine what that percentage is and what that dollar amount is based off the percentage.
Okay, so I don't remember seeing that figure for the heat pump. What does 6% off of that heat pump, what does that save us?
Roughly, I'm looking at 300K.
Okay. All right, thank you very much. I
Yep.
appreciate that information. If we don't have any other questions, we'll go ahead and close this item and move on to the action item 2.03, which is presentation, discussion, possible action to recommend the Board of Trustees approve $8,160,000 to the 2024-25 C Major Projects Program for the construction phase funding of a new elementary school instead, Silver Dollar area. Over to you.
So Tammy Zimmerman, Chief Facilities Management Officer. So this is the spreadsheet that you guys we see at every meeting. We have a request for funding, we tally it up. And so we are asking to add that $8.16 million to that Stead Elementary line to actually award this project at our November 12th meeting. So we're asking for the approval of the recommendation to the board to approve the 2024-2025 C Major Project Program.
So moved.
Second?
Was that a comment you said?
You moved and seconded, right?
Yeah.
Can I make a comment?
Okay, before we go to vote, open it up for comment.
Thank you. For all the reasons stated as far as waiting, and again, depending on especially these two experts, it does, that is, I think that's a harder choice of waiting and not knowing where those bids will go and could we save any of that money coming back. So that, I think, for all the pros that you've given on why we need to do this right now, I support it, but I very strongly, just am so disappointed that we are so off base on this. And to Member Andriola's comments too, I really want to see if you guys can dial in and find out where we missed by so much, so that when another school comes around, you guys walk in the door like we have for all the others and give us a number that's pretty close to what the actual number was, and not be off by so much. So I have a lot of frustration there because I feel so accountable for this money to our taxpayers. And basically, Clara and I and the other electeds are the ones who hear most directly from people. So maybe that's part of it too. When you're an elected, you're getting people grilling us so it's not just in Paul. I'm sorry, there's three of us. It's only Clara and me. Yeah. So anyway, no, it's for all the electeds that aren't here too. That impact of decisions we make because we're here to be a good steward of our taxpayer dollars. So I'm going to support this. But I'm frustrated and hope you guys can bring back some answers so we can move forward for the next time in a better direction. So I'm hoping there are some good lessons learned here. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions? Member Herman, would you care to make any comments?
No, I've made my comments.
All right. Thank you. And with that being said, no more questions. We have the motion from Member Ivory, second from Andriola. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Nay,
We have one nay.
Herman.
All right, thank you, and it does pass. Thank you very much. All right, we'll go ahead and move on to item 3.01, public comment. Do we have any public comment?
No public comment.
All right. Announcement of the next meeting, we're showing December 5th, 2024. Any questions or comments on that while we're there? All right, December 5th, No more emergencies. This year. All right, and with that, we'll go on to 303, which is adjourn the meeting. Thank you very much for being here.